Boo! Prepare to be burdened with the haunting memory of the Hash-Slinging Slasher, because we're heading down to Bikini Bottom tonight for a little haunting spree in a Golden Sound Films podcast Halloween Spooktacular.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Undersea Pineapple of the Golden Silent Films podcast, where we will be doing our best to survive a Halloween encounter with the infamous Hash-Slinging Slasher. We will also be visiting with the always absorbent and yellow and porous SpongeBob SquarePants. That is SpongeBob SquarePants. But before we overindulge in the Krusty Krab, I'd be derelict in my duties if I didn't thank friend of the show and SpongeBob SquarePants superfan Roberto for that awesome intro. While we await the Hash-Slinging Slasher, let's talk about the various Golden Silent Films podcast social media outlets. As usual, head on over to Golden Silence Cast on Instagram for up-to-date info on this little show. And for all of you folks on X or Twitter, just follow at Golden Silence 1 or just search for Golden Silence Cast and we will pop up. Also, if you have Bluesky out there, you can find us at Golden Silence Cast. All of those screen names and sites will be in the episode description in case you are interested in checking us out. As always, we would love to have you on board solving cinematic mysteries with us. At these social spaces, you'll get behind-the-scenes pics and info, upcoming episode reveals, and other fun film-related materials, and fun photos of our seafood-loving podcasts, Gizmo and Soda. Also, if you're listening to this program on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Amazon Music, or any service that allows you to rate and review, please leave comments, reviews, ratings, or all of the above. Our show has been around for 5 years, and we only have received 17 reviews on iTunes. We would love to see those numbers keep growing, and you awesome silent film fans out there can make it happen. All of those ratings and reviews help immensely. So live your best review-leaving life, and help our show grow and reach fellow silent film fans. Dropping those reviews gives us more exposure in the world of podcasts and lets us know how we can improve. So as always, we are grateful for any and all feedback and always want to bring you the best show humanly possible. And also subscribe to the Golden Silent Films podcast. While our output can be sketchy and irregular at times, if you're subscribed, you will never miss an episode, and the moment new content drops, it's going to go straight to your listening device of choice. Now, we are nearing the end of our 5th season and don't want you to miss a second. And as for YouTube, we are pushing to get 100 subscribers before 2026, so you know the magic words: like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. If the title of this episode caught you by surprise, I can assure you that no one was more surprised than us here at the Golden Silent Films podcast. The fact that we're even doing this episode is something I could never have predicted. But at the same time, it's ideas and concepts like this that really get us excited to make this show. From one episode to the next, I never really know what topic will provide the next deep dive. I've said it before and I'll say it again, we're always one weird notation in a book, a random click on the internet, or a Saturday morning cartoon away from a carefully planned and curated episode schedule being thrown out the porthole. Growing up, I was about a decade or so too early for SpongeBob SquarePants. My heyday with Nickelodeon animation was the early to mid-90s, watching staples like Rugrats, Doug, and Ren and Stimpy. By the time SpongeBob and Patrick Star were getting into deep-sea shenanigans, I had moved on, finding other entertainment avenues to go down. Sure, I watched the random episode here and there and enjoyed the first movie, but that was it. That was my history with the long-running cartoon. Now, almost 25 years later, we find ourselves late to the party again. Late to having any clue that our favorite bloodsucker made one of the most famous and unexpected cameo appearances of all time. It only took a few years of this podcast existing to be smartened up to the quasi-animated Orlok. So a huge thank you goes out to friend of the show Stephanie for bringing this topic to our attention and really making this episode exist in the first place. It's stuff like this that we often talk about at the end of every episode when we ask, what do you want to talk about? The world of silent film is monstrously big, and we are but a single organization, so fun, weird, and unexpected detours are always welcome. We are nothing without your participation, so, in the spirit of Halloween, are you troubled by silent films not getting the recognition they deserve? Do you experience feelings of dread when you hear characters talking in a movie? If the answer is yes, then don't wait another minute. Just pick up the phone and call the professionals. And by calling professionals, we mean contact the Golden Silent Films podcast via our social medias. We are here and ready to believe you. That is all to say, you never know what piece of silent film will pop up and influence a new generation that doesn't fully understand the context and history of what they are seeing. Generations of viewers know these concepts and characters without really knowing their silent backstory. There are far more folks out there who know a certain Count more from his light flickering fetish than his actual blood-sucking. Before we get into the episode details proper, I wanted to let you know that we will be watching this underwater animation via the Paramount Plus streaming service. If you have it, you'll have access to pretty much every piece of SpongeBob SquarePants content ever committed to film or television. Now, I am by no means a SpongeBob expert, so there could be something missing that I am ignorant of, but there is a treasure trove of SpongeBob content. And not only do you get all of that stuff, but you get it in pretty stunning visual quality. The early seasons of the show, which encompass Graveyard Shift, which we're about to talk about, are over 25 years old, but still look gorgeous on Paramount Plus. If you haven't the time or technology to get Paramount Plus, there are still quite a few ways to get your hands on this episode and get to the Krusty Krab in time for the following discussion. SpongeBob SquarePants is available on DVD and still regularly shown on television, though I don't know how lucky you'll be in getting the episode that we're going to talk about today, but that is an option. You can also head to the always helpful YouTube and just search for any number of terms and titles, and you'll be inundated with a whole bunch of clips covering this spooky and spongy subject matter. And while you're watching clips, give us a subscribe while you're on YouTube. You know, cheap plugs and all. So for this episode's biography segment, let's look at the program SpongeBob SquarePants for anyone not familiar with the iconic animated show. SpongeBob SquarePants first aired after the 1999 Kids' Choice Awards on May 1st, 1999, while officially premiering 2 months later on July 17th, 1999. It chronicles the adventures of the titular character and his aquatic friends in the underwater city of Bikini Bottom. The creation of this animated sponge is quite the story in and of itself. The road to Bikini Bottom came from the mind and experiences of the dual-threat mind of Stephen Hillenburg. Now, this origin story is certainly not what I was expecting when I started this scuba dive into the topic. In an article for NPR in the program All Things Considered, Ashley Montgomery explains, SpongeBob SquarePants creator Stephen Hillenburg attended Humboldt University majoring in marine science with a minor in art. After graduating in 1984, Hillenburg eventually began working at the Ocean Institute in Dana Point, California. While working as a marine science educator there, Hillenburg illustrated the flora and fauna of tidal pools in the form of an educational comic book called The Intertidal Zone. And the narrator of the comic book may look familiar, a sea sponge with sunglasses and a round face named Bob the Sponge. Hillenburg would take his interest in art to the next level when he enrolled in the California Institute of Art's experimental animation program in 1989. His time there would greatly add to his animation experience while leading to some pretty cool and high-profile employment experiences later on. Eventually, he was hired as a director on the Nickelodeon cartoon Rocko's Modern Life, which aired from 1993 to 1996. Rocko's Modern Life is another staple of my early Nick animation years. While working on the show, Hillenburg was encouraged to turn the Intertidal Zone into an animated format, something he could pitch to Nickelodeon. Hillenburg would tell NPR, "It started me thinking, if I'm going to do a show, I would do it about these invertebrates and these crazy animals that exist in the ocean. And it would be the perfect fusion of the things I did. It was that moment where I said, maybe I should pursue this, go down this path." Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants, takes us a little deeper into the creation of that titular character and how he came on board. Tom Kenny explains, "Stephen Hillenburg kind of shyly brought out these drawings and told me the idea of this sponge, and I just loved it. He said, 'Do you know what this guy would sound like?' I was instantly like, yes, please. I immediately felt like if anyone else got the job, I would be very sad. I can't explain, it just felt right. I let him know that I would love this and nurture it the way he would." After approving Hillenburg's pitch, Nickelodeon set up SpongeBob SquarePants to be the network's first Saturday morning cartoon. The show would be developed with Hillenburg and Tim Hill. Hill would tell the Television Academy website, "I don't see myself as a co-creator. I helped Steve develop the show. I worked on the pilot, developed premises for the series, and I worked on the series Bible, which was really good. It was me, director and storyboard artist Derek Dryman, and Steve coming up with it. It was great to work with Steve. We laughed so hard. It was just a great time." Turning back to Ashley Montgomery, we read, SpongeBob SquarePants first aired as a preview after the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards on May 1st, 1999. The first segment of this preview, titled Help Wanted, is only 8 minutes long, yet introduces a robust coterie of residents in the fictional underwater town of Bikini Bottom. The series would officially debut on July 17th, 1999. It was a huge hit right out of the dock. That same year, SpongeBob SquarePants beat out the ever-popular cartoon Pokemon in average viewership rating. Not too shabby at all. So, with that lore and backstory covered, let's switch out of the historical mode for something a little more Halloweenish and get to some scary stories as we head to Bikini Bottom for our episode discussion as we look at Graveyard Shift is episode 36 of SpongeBob SquarePants and first aired on September 6th, 2002. With Jay Lender and Dan Povenmire as storyboard directors and written by Mr. Lawrence, Jay Lender, and Dan Povenmire, with animation director Sean Dempsey and creative director Derek Dryman. The episode begins with a little narration. The Krusty Krab, Bikini Bottom's premier daytime eatery, where it will be closing time right about... Not so fast. One night, Krusty Krab's staff is preparing for its usual nightly closing, which can't come soon enough for old Squidward. Those plans go awry when someone walks up to the door and tries to place an order. Squidward smugly informs him that they are closed, and the customer decides to take his money elsewhere. In this episode, and the show in general, Squidward Tentacles is played here by Roger Bumpass. Mr. Krabs, owner of the Krusty Krab, sees the financial possibilities of a late-night shift before tearing apart the close sign and, against Squidward's wishes, declares the Krusty Krab is now a 24-hour establishment. Mr. Krabs, portrayed by the always amazing Clancy Brown, then promptly leaves his employees while SpongeBob is overjoyed at the prospect and, as the night goes on, takes pleasure in the tasks he had no time to do during the day. "Isn't this great, Squidward?" SpongeBob exclaims. "Just you and me together for hours and hours and hours, and then the sun will come up and it'll be tomorrow and we'll still be working. It'll be just like a sleepover, only we'll be sweaty and we'll be covered with grease. Are you ready to rock, Squidward?" Though it was mentioned earlier, I have to bring up again that SpongeBob SquarePants is played here by Tom Kenny. This work at night scene especially cracked me up. I loved all the touches that SpongeBob adds in as he goes over all the jobs he can do at night, and I loved the burning gag at the end, and that's the cherry on the top for me. Now, if you're wondering how Nosferatu will work into this story, this scene was a big impetus for that appearance, but in a bit of a roundabout way. Also, I love how comically in love SpongeBob is with his job at the Krusty Krab. It's something I've fallen in love with as I've watched more and more episodes, and really, it adds a lot to the porous character's earnestness. "I wanted SpongeBob to love his job," Stephen Hillenburg told The Guardian. "I always imagined a kid going into McDonald's and seeing a guy cooking and thinking it was the best job in the world. You can eat hamburgers all the time." When the time comes to take out the trash, however, SpongeBob is a little hesitant on account of the creepy darkness outside the restaurant. After going outside and screaming the whole way to throw out the trash, he comes back in and tells Squidward it was an easy task. Squidward, sensing SpongeBob's fear, makes up a spooky tale on the spot about the aforementioned Hash-Slinging Slasher. "The slash-bringing hasher," SpongeBob replies. "The sash-ringing, the trash-singing, mash-flinging, the flash-stringing, ringing, the crash-dinging, daw?" Squidward corrects SpongeBob, "Yes, the Hash-Slinging Slasher. But most people just call him the because that's all the time they have before he gets them." SpongeBob demands Squidward tell him the full story. So, long story short, a clumsy former Krusty Krab fry cook accidentally chopped his hand off and had it replaced with a rusty spatula. Due to fatally being run over by a bus and being posthumously fired, the horrific specter returns every Tuesday night, though Squidward only put this detail in the story when SpongeBob told him what day it was, to exact vengeance on all those who reside in the restaurant. There are 3 signs heralding the return of the frightening phantom fry cook. First, the lights will flicker on and off. Second, the phone will ring with no one on the other end. The final sign is the arrival of the bus that had run the cook over, with Squidward adding, "Then he exits the bus and crosses the street without looking both ways, because he's already dead. Then he taps on the window with his grisly spatula hand." Squidward then laughs at SpongeBob's shrieks of fright, but when SpongeBob continues screaming, an annoyed Squidward tells SpongeBob that he was just joking and that the story is just not true. I loved this scene. Especially of interest to me was the music. They did such a great job really building the suspense with some top-notch mood-setting music. The sound of the music really took me to a Universal Monster state of mind, and it's so different from the music regularly used in the show. It was a great touch that really added a lot of heft and suspense and horror to the ghost story being told, and I thought it was just absolutely perfect. And speaking with NPR in 2001, Hillenburg talked about his inspiration for the SquarePants sponge we all know and love today. Hillenburg recalled, "It wasn't until I drew a square sponge, like a sink sponge, that it really seemed to fit the character I was looking for. That innocent, squeaky clean, I guess you could say, the square peg in the round hole." Turning back to the show, it's now 3 in the morning and the restaurant is now completely empty, with no customers anywhere. SpongeBob and Squidward are the only two there. Whilst contending with SpongeBob's thorough ceiling washing, Squidward laments the idea of the Krusty Krab being open 24 hours a day, wondering who would want a Krabby Patty at that time. We are treated to a cutaway gag here showing Patrick waking up at this hour specifically to eat a Krabby Patty. Suddenly, though, back in the restaurant, the lights begin flickering, though Squidward initially thinks SpongeBob is messing around in a failed attempt to scare him. After realizing that nobody is touching the light switch, Squidward then blames the faulty electrical wiring, reasoning that the restaurant was not built to run 24 hours a day. Soon after, though, the phone rings but remains silent when Squidward answers. This time, SpongeBob thinks that Squidward is trying to scare him. Squidward denies the accusation and becomes more nervous, as these are 2 of the 3 signs that supposedly indicate the arrival of the Hash-Slinging Slasher. While trying to remember the 3rd sign, a bus pulls up to the Krusty Krab, even though the buses supposedly never run so late. Its lone departing passenger is a shadow-covered figure with what appears to be glowing red eyes, wielding a spatula for a hand. Fearing it's the Hash-Slinging Slasher, Squidward screams in horror. SpongeBob believes it's Squidward who is dressed up as the ghost across the street, in an effort to entertain him out of love. However, there are a few flaws in SpongeBob's theory that Squidward is the man across the street. First thing is, as Squidward explains, is that he hates SpongeBob, so he would not do anything out of love. The other thing is how that ghost is across the street while Squidward is right here next to SpongeBob talking to him. Having thought about Squidward's argument for a bit, SpongeBob sees the Hash-Slinging Slasher walk up to the door and tap on it, which makes SpongeBob scream in horror. Now, this episode, and all of SpongeBob really for that matter, is so memorable for its animation and so much more. There is always so much to see and hear, and a lot of that comes directly from Hillenburg. Tom Kenny would tell NPR, "Hillenburg definitely is the big kahuna, and a lot of the times just has every vocal nuance and eye blink and twitch mapped out to the nanosecond in his mind. And then other times, he'll just take you off the leash and go, I don't know where this is going, just take it where it feels funny." While we're talking about SpongeBob's performance, let's detour again for a little bit and hear Tom Kenny and find out how he got this legendary role. In an interview with the AV Club website, Tom Kenny recalled, "Stephen Hillenburg knew what he wanted. SpongeBob was his baby and his creation, and he cast all the characters very carefully. I think with me, he made a decision right away and very quickly. The kind of data that you're talking about, I think, was him saying, he's kind of grown up, but he's kind of a kid. He's kind of like Stan Laurel. He's kind of like Jerry Lewis. He's a spaz, but he's really sweet. He irritates everybody, but he's very likable. He's kind of like a munchkin. Maybe he sounds a little bit like a munchkin, but he's in that Pee Wee Herman tradition of ostensibly adult characters that act like kids. Or the Three Stooges, the way the Three Stooges act like kids." Back to the show, believing the events they witness to be supernatural, a frightened SpongeBob and Squidward say their final words. Squidward says to SpongeBob that he sort of kind of liked him. And SpongeBob opens up his heart and tells Squidward that he used Squidward's clarinet to unclog his toilet. Now, the macabre figure approaches the counter. When this creature enters the light, however, he turns out to just be an ordinary fish person holding a spatula in a fully intact hand which had just been covered by a long sleeve. He asks for a job application and reveals that he was the one who called earlier and hung up before speaking because he was nervous. Relieved, SpongeBob asks the applicant if he has any references, though Squidward notes that this turn of events does not explain the lights flickering. Squidward says, "Wait, if that was you on the phone and you on the bus, then who was flickering the lights?" As if to answer his own question, the lights flicker again, revealing the culprit to be none other than the vampire Nosferatu. They casually tease him, as if this is a well-known habit to Krusty Krab staff and clients alike. Smiling at the trio mischievously, Nosferatu/Orlok flicks the lights off once more, cutting it to black, and the episode ends. James Graby, in an article for Polygon, walks us through why this final image of the episode is so universal. Graby writes, "But even though the movie has an 80-year advantage on SpongeBob, it's entirely possible that more people have seen Count Orlok in that episode of SpongeBob than have seen Nosferatu. That's how these things go. Nosferatu is a landmark film full of striking images, but the power of those images, and the decades where it was difficult or even impossible to watch the movie, has ensured that the basic visual idea of Nosferatu has become more culturally dominant than the film's full context is today." I do want to take this moment really quick to mention that before anyone writes any comments or sends any messages or says anything, I wanted to catch you up before you write in about the creature of the flickering night, that he's called Nosferatu when his name is Orlok. Episode writer and gag man Jay Lender felt the tone the characters would use to kind of sing-song the name of Nosferatu in the episode fit better with that than it did with Count Orlok. It was all part of the plan and never a mistake. Now, Claudia Picado, in an article for Collider, writes, "The use of such a silly non sequitur to punctuate one of the creepiest episodes of SpongeBob is emblematic of the often surreal humor that defined SpongeBob and made it so appealing to children and adults revisiting a childhood classic 20 years later." But how did such a terrifying figure end up in Bikini Bottom in the first place? That is another whole fun layer of the SpongeBob SquarePants story. We learned that writer Jay Lender was the force behind bringing Orlok to the animated screen. And it's interesting to learn that the light-flickering phantom wasn't even originally planned to be Orlok. James Greby, in his article for Polygon, writes, "Count Orlok wasn't originally supposed to be the culprit. Lender says that in an earlier draft of the episode, after SpongeBob excitedly lists work tasks that he can now do at night, flipping patties, swabbing the bathroom, and burning his hand, there's going to be a fourth joke where he delivered mail to Floorboard Harry, a previously unseen, unmentioned creature that apparently just lives underneath the Krusty Krab. Then at the end of the episode, it was going to be Floorboard Harry flipping the light switch." Graby continues, "But the at-night joke already fulfilled the comedy rule of threes, so the fourth bit with Floorboard Harry got cut. This meant his appearance at the end wouldn't be a callback, just a totally random image. It wasn't quite good enough. Luckily, another, better idea popped into Lender's head." Now, as a kid, Jay Lender was an avid reader of magazines. Famous Monsters of Filmland was one of his favorites, and that one introduced him to a world of classic movies he didn't always have access to in moving picture form. The magazine served as a way to expose himself to the legendary films via articles and photos. "Stuff would appear in this magazine that I couldn't track down, but I could be aware of," Lender told Polygon. "So I could see that old genre films like This Island Earth existed, but I couldn't actually see them unless it showed up on TV. But one picture, though, in that magazine would permanently burn a spot in Lender's brain, which would lead to this most famous of cameos. They would show a still from Nosferatu," he said, "and it was always that still of him standing in the doorway. So, my first experience with Orlok, and with that image, is as this disjointed non sequitur. When the moment came that I needed to come up with a replacement horror non sequitur, that image was already in that slot in my brain. What's interesting is that because of SpongeBob, for 20 years everyone else's first experience with Orlok came as a weird, disjointed, non sequitur horror image too." Let's take this talk of Nosferatu and bring this episode of the Golden Silent Films podcast full circle and talk about the effect of the graveyard shift on the more modern world of entertainment, and more specifically, 2024's Nosferatu. This episode would impact generations of viewers, one of whom was Robert Eggers, who knows how animation watched during childhood can provide so much artistic inspiration. Speaking with The Hollywood Reporter, Eggers would explain, "There was a show called Muppet Babies when I was a kid that would play little clips of Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera and early versions of Cyrano de Bergerac and stuff. That weird cartoon gave me exposure to a lot of movies that I watched when I was a little older with memories from Muppet Babies. So thanks, SpongeBob. Kirsten Chuba of The Hollywood Reporter would add, Nosferatu star Nicholas Hoult also weighed in on the phenomenon, joking he hadn't seen it, but said, I've got to go back and watch more SpongeBob, and I like that that's people's introduction to it, and hopefully our movie will be a reintroduction to it in a different way. Let's rewind a bit and go back to James Greby, who adds, That's the thing about Nosferatu. It's an innovative, powerful film, but over the past century it's become as much a pop culture artifact as a work of art itself. People who haven't seen Nosferatu might still know of its existence, or, at the very least, be vaguely aware of the gross, rat-looking vampire from the silent film that isn't Dracula. The 1979 Salem's Lot miniseries looked to Nosferatu for its vampire design. Blue Oyster Cult wrote a song about him. Queen and David Bowie used footage from the film in the video for Under Pressure. Dungeons & Dragons has a whole type of vampire called a Nosferatu in the Monster Manual. And Shadow of the Vampire fictionalized the making of the movie. Nosferatu is a reference as much as it is a movie itself. Much like our favorite undead count, SpongeBob SquarePants will certainly enjoy its own entertainment and pop culture immortality. SpongeBob developer Tim Hill explains, There are now several generations that have grown up on it. I'm old enough to know millennials or Gen Zs who grew up watching it and who really loved it. They always ask me about certain episodes and either I didn't remember or when they spit it back to me I go, oh yeah, that was really funny. And I hear from relatives who watched the show with their kids. That was a big advantage of SpongeBob. You didn't just park the kids in front of the TV to watch some cartoon. Adults enjoyed it as well. So that's part of the legacy. You could still watch it at any age and get a laugh out of it or appreciate it. So, we're going to leave with one more look at the legacy of SpongeBob and this episode in particular. James Greby, talking to writer Jay Lender, writes, I know that this show has a bigger reach than any silent film, Lender says. In case that sounds arrogant, he emphasizes what a sensation SpongeBob SquarePants was when it premiered. Some 15 million viewers were watching it weekly, a number that's hard to fathom in today's media landscape with its splintered audience taking in an overabundance of niche options. Nothing today can have the cultural impact that SpongeBob had when it first came out, Lender says. He also feels that the size of the audience means he probably peaked with this one brief reference. I have to accept that this is my legacy. It's almost impossible to imagine anything I could do that would be more noteworthy later on, Lender said. With our discussion about Cursed Crab Shacks coming to a close, it is time to find out where your favorite creators are laid to rest. This is the segment where we join incredible animators on the other side of the cemetery gates. The history, the art, the celebrity spectacle converge in Where Are They Now?, your guide to paying your respects to the animators that have entertained us so much. In March of 2017, Stephen Hillenburg told Variety that he had been diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Despite the grim prognosis, Hillenburg continued to work on SpongeBob SquarePants for as long as his health allowed. Hillenburg, according to reports of the time, was in the early stages of the disease. During his last days as executive producer, he had difficulty speaking, and it ultimately got to the point where he stopped going to the office due to the progression of the illness. Hillenburg lost his battle against ALS on November 26, 2018, at the age of 57. Reports indicated that he died at his home in San Marino, California. They would also report that his body was cremated, and that his ashes were scattered, appropriately enough, in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California the next day. The third SpongeBob SquarePants movie, titled The SpongeBob Movie Sponge on the Run, was released in 2020 and is dedicated to him. He also served as executive producer on the project. In an interview with the Den of Geek website, Tom Kenny would relate, Man, I would say what Stephen Hillenburg brought was Stephen Hillenburg, who he was and what he cared about. He was a completely unusual person, especially in show business. I never really met anyone like him, and I'm sure I never will. He was such an unusual guy, like in his path into show business. Show business and being a show creator wasn't what he always wanted to be. It wasn't his all-consuming interest. He's not one of those guys that grew up loving movies and then went to film school and then became a film director, where there's no experience or anything else besides that. Kenny continued, He didn't care about being a mogul. Considering what a success SpongeBob became and how much income SpongeBob provided for him, he still lived really simply. Like, more simply than anyone else would. He just wanted to surf and paint and laugh, and he was always very concerned with the integrity of the show and the comedy of the show. And he was really involved in that right up until he passed away, still coming in, still in on recording sessions, and still okaying stories. Nickelodeon, in a statement on Hillenburg's passing, would write, "Steve imbued SpongeBob SquarePants with a unique sense of humor and innocence that has brought joy to generations of kids and families everywhere. His utterly original characters and the world of Bikini Bottom will long stand as a reminder of the value of optimism, friendship, and the limitless power of imagination." With this Halloween Undersea Spooktacular approaching dry land, we want to thank you for spending your valuable scary story listening time with us. We say it a lot, but it means so much to us that you download and listen to this show. There are so many podcasts out there in the world, and there is so much to listen to, whether it be film-related or otherwise, and we never take it for granted that you find listeners give us a spot in your busy day. So, thank you all so very much. And for everyone still listening, we want to thank you for tagging along with us on our occasional less-than-silent adventures. We could definitely understand if you wanted to skip this episode or it wasn't what you were looking for in a silent film episode. But while the podcast is ostensibly about silent films, we also cover stuff that is very much silent film adjacent. Whether it's SpongeBob here or a discussion about modern sound films like The Last Voyage of the Demeter, we love digging into weird side topics that aren't always fully silent, but still hope you enjoy these digressions as well. Did you enjoy these animated adventures of our favorite vampire? Since we are new to SpongeBob, what episodes should we check out next? Have you ever had a legendary bloodsucker wreaking havoc with your electricity? Tell us your story. Let us know all of those frightening details and more at the various social media spots of the Golden Silent Films podcast. On that note, if you have forgotten, we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Bluesky. Let us know what you thought of this wet and wild adventure. What silent and silent-related movies or cartoons, past or present, do you want us to explore next? Our terrifying world of silent movie knowledge and experience is constantly creeping forward, and we need your input for our future episodes here and beyond. Luckily, folks, you won't need to survive a scary service at the Krusty Krab to use our social media hangouts. You can always find us at Golden Silence Cast on Instagram and at Golden Silence 1 on Twitter and at Golden Silence Cast on Bluesky. And again, if you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or any other podcast service that allows it, subscribe, rate, and review. If you're watching it on YouTube, like, subscribe, and comment. It does so much for our visibility, and we love hearing your thoughts and ideas. We have a goal set of getting 100 subscribers to our YouTube channel during the year of 2025, and time is running out, and we are way behind. So please subscribe and spread the word so other cool folks can subscribe as well. We really, really appreciate all of your incredible support, and seeing how much you folks are listening on all of your many platforms and devices only makes us want to make our episodes as spooky as they possibly can be. So, with all that being said, we want to thank all of you fine listeners for all of your fine listening. And don't forget, the silents are golden, and the talkies, they're just a fad. And happy Halloween to everyone out there.